All right, how's everybody doing out there? So hopefully we are loud and clear. Let me just check on the chat panel, make sure we're good to go. And let's see. All right, well, hopefully you guys are all hearing me loud and clear. And so my name is Mike Brightman. I'm with Brightman Designs, and we offer design, drafting, visualization, and workflow training services. So just about everything that we do revolves around SketchUp Pro, Layout, Lumion, and our Condoc tools. And so today what I want to talk about is creating better Lumion Interiors, so lighting and rendering Lumion Interiors. Now, typically when we talk about Lumion, we focus on exteriors. So Lumion's ability to handle large sites, create weather and oceans and water, its ability to handle exteriors is unparalleled. But the truth is that you can get some really fantastic, comparable, beautiful results for interiors as well. So the model that we're going to work with today is the Master Suite SketchUp model. This is pulled directly from our SketchUp for Professionals course. This is a brand new course, just launched yesterday. It's 12 hours long, and 9 of those hours are completely free. So everything that I'm presenting today is covered in a tutorial style in that online course. So we've got plenty of links to jump over there and check out that, sign up for it, take a lap through it. So in Chapter 8, I show you how to create the Master Suite model. In Chapter 9, I show you how to import that model into Lumion. And then I think it's Chapter 11 where I show you how to take that same SketchUp model, send it into Layout to create your construction documents or your design packets. So lots of good stuff. Totally free course. There's an extended version of that as well. So please do check that out and see what it's all about. So during this presentation, I'm going to explain the Lumion light sources. We're going to expose the strengths and weaknesses, and I'm going to suggest the best use of each of these different light sources. So ultimately, we're going to uncover the mysteries of lighting in Lumion. So I'm going to also present a recipe for perfect lighting. So it's a proven workflow that I use and you can use on your projects to get very predictable results. I'm going to provide some resources like demonstration models and effect stacks that you can download and use. So you can have those, make them your own. It's going to give you a jump start on learning. And then we're also going to make a few suggestions on links for resources on where you can access tutorials so that you can learn and practice. So basically what we are going to do, if I just take a look on my screen here at some of these renders, this is a SketchUp model. This is the Master Suite SketchUp model. I created this using SketchUp and the Condoc system, and you can see we took a few snapshots. We are going to take this SketchUp model and we are going to import it into Lumion to create images that look like these. So that's what today is all about, is just explaining all of the different light sources that are available in Lumion, all of the different behaviors, and just kind of uncovering those secrets. So in order to do that, when I was kicking things off to write this blog post, I realized that I really needed to study the Lumion light sources. So basically there's 5 or 6 different light sources that we're going to talk about. You've got the sun and spotlights, omni-lights, light fills, emissive materials, and line and area lights. So all these different light sources behave in different ways. And so it's really important that we isolate that light source so we can understand what it's doing. So check out my screen. On here you've got, this is a Lumion file that I've created and provided to you for download on that Capturing Lumion Interiors blog. And on each one of these, we've got these different layers here. So we've got like spotlight, omni-light, fill light. So right now we have a spotlight turned on. And so this really helped me just kind of isolate what is going on when our spotlight is turned on. All right. So if I turn my spotlight off, I can turn on an omni-light. And you can see we can get different behavior out of each one. All right, here's like a fill light. So fill light gives kind of just like brightens up all the surfaces, whereas an omni-light actually provides some kind of shading there. And a spotlight gives us some nice shadows. So really understanding all of these different light sources, and not only that, but also the implications of effects. So when I add an effect and render, let me turn all these guys on so that our photo mode works. So when I look at this, see this first one is an omni-light. And so an omni-light just kind of like pushes light onto all the surfaces, but you even get a little bit of different behavior when you render some of these different lights with a hyperlight turned on, as well as some of these other effects like global illumination or reflections. So what I did is I created this kind of like default environment that like allows you to study each one of these light sources. We provided this for download on our blog post, so definitely check that out. So let's hop over to that blog post, and I want to make a few comments about what's going on there. We've got this Capturing Lumion Interiors blog post. All right, so this is at brightmandesigns.com. Check it out on our blog, easy to get to. All right, so as I scroll down, you can see here, this is our 3D warehouse post of that model. We'll get there. But what I want to talk about is that this blog post, it's not just a one-time read. This could be a resource that you go back to and check out to understand these lights again. So let's take a lap through some of these lights. And I'm going to zoom in on my web page here and just kind of walk through them with you. All right, so let me zoom in just a little bit more. All right, so first off, you've got the sun, right? And each one of these images, check this out. I can click and drag on it, and I can see no light source with the sun turned on or off. So it really helps me understand what are the effects of this light on this kind of default state of the model. All right, so it's a directional light source. It casts shadows. And the default position of the sun is controlled in the Environments tab. So you can always override those with the sun effect or the sun study effect. But the important thing is that the sun does cast shadows, and those shadows are actually not exactly soft shadows. They're pretty crisp. All right, let's look at a spotlight. Again, I can click and drag to see the effects of a spotlight off and a spotlight on. Now, a spotlight will cast shadows the way you would expect it to. So that's kind of the most, I'd say it's the most powerful light in Lumion in that it behaves the way that you would expect it to. It's shining light in a direction, it's casting shadows, it does cast soft shadows as well. All right, something to take note about on this spotlight is that it's the only artificial light source that's calculated by global illumination. And we'll cover some more of this later too, but it's just those are the key, kind of listed out some of the key features of each one of these lights. All right, it's also ideal for use in can lights, pendant lights, and lamps. All right, let's keep going. An omni-light kind of casts light in all directions, but it does give this like shading effect. All right, it does not cast shadows though. See how there's no shadow below that BD logo? So the fact that an omni-light, it will kind of, it doesn't cast shadows, so it can actually have this like light leakage. And light leakage is like when, if you were to place an omni-light near a wall and then go and create an exterior rendering, well, that omni-light might be hitting your trees outside. So you got to control that through the brightness. Be careful with that. All right. So these are ideal for complementing spotlights. We'll look at that, how we add spotlights to a lamp and then add an omni-light to kind of add that overall glow. So that's an omni-light. And then a light fill. You can see that a light fill is really used just to kind of push more light onto a surface rather than adding a bunch of additional omni-lights or spotlights. This way, light fill just makes the surface brighter, so we don't have to trick the program into getting light into a corner or something like that. Again, these do not cast shadows, so they will leak through a wall, but no problem, you control that with brightness. All right, now an area light and a line light are one in the same. So it took me a little bit to figure that one out, but basically they come in at different default brightnesses. And from my perspective, I think a line light is really the one that I need. I would use a line light as cove lighting. You could use it to just kind of like light a whole area and make it bigger into an area light. But really, I like to just use it to backlight TVs, backlight art, and then use for cove lighting. And that's what we're going to do with our Master Suite tutorial. All right, so set the default brightness. And over here, we've got our show light source is checked on in our properties. All right. And so again, let me just explain this too. This one works kind of like an omni light or like an omni grid. So it's like an even grid of omni lights, And so it's kind of, same behavior, it's just got a more even spread. All right, and then if I keep going down, we've got an emissive material. Now this one's a little tricky. An emissive material, it's basically a glowing material. It creates this like glaring light. It does not actually cast light unless you have hyperlight turned on. So you have to render it with hyperlight turned on, which is what I did here. And then you can see like right here in the inside of that D, you can see that that's being lit up. So in order for an emissive material to cast light, hyperlight has to be turned on, and you have to have at least one bright pixel of that material in your scene. So what that means is if I put like a block in front of that light, and it was blocking that entire thing, that emissive material is not going to shoot light around it. If I'm not seeing one pixel of it, it just doesn't light up at all. So something to keep in mind when you're using emissive materials. Okay, so let's see, we took a look at that. Now let's hop over into SketchUp and take a quick look at this model. All right, so this model is set up using our Condoc system, and the Condoc system is part of SketchUp for Professionals. It's our standards. It's our entire set of layers. It's our Condoc system extension, which helps you keep things organized, and also always free is the perspective tool. So the idea behind Condoc is to give you a set of standards that creates predictable results, as well as a set of tools that simplifies and automates the most difficult tasks in SketchUp, being layers, styles, and scenes. So we're giving you a place for everything and everything in its place. And when you put everything in its place, things just happen the way you want them to. So if you check this out, you can see that we've got like our furniture. I can double click in and isolate my furniture. The way this system is set up is you create a group, assign one of these design layers to the group, and put the objects in that correct group. So in my furniture group, this is on the layer design furniture, I add my furniture. On my walls, add my walls. And what happens is we have this nice clean SketchUp model that's ready for import. The other nice thing about our template is our render tab. Click on the render tab and choose file. I'm gonna hit save as. So this goes into my desktop temp. All right, so whenever you're ready to render, you just click on the render tab and it turns all the layers on. It's at like a nice lightweight setting, and just save it, and then you're ready to import into Lumion. So let's do just that. So we're going to import this model into Lumion. So let me hop back over there. And we're going to go ahead and start a new file. And instead of starting one of these new scenes, I'm actually going to load a scene. I'm going to load our Dropbox resources under templates. I've created a default template for Lumion. All right, so we're going to open that up, and inside of my default template for Lumion, I've got all of my layers set up. So this way, I don't have to add the layers every single time I open Lumion. I've already got them set up. So same kind of idea when we're automating these processes in SketchUp. We want to automate these same processes in Lumion. So we've got like a temp layer where everything kind of comes in on that layer, and then we move it to the appropriate place, kind of like layer 0. And then we've got import site, buildings. So those are your site model and your building models. And then you've got like entourage, generic, and then 3D people versus 2D people, because you probably want 3D people in your animation, whereas you want 2D people in your stills. And then we have interior lighting, exterior lighting, landscape, trees, shrubs, and flowers. Those seem to be about the right collection of layers for me. If I need more or less, I can always just get rid of them or add more. So what we're going to do is go to our place mode, and under imports, I'm going to import a new model. I'm going to go to my desktop temp, and we're going to import that SketchUp for Professionals Master Suite model, and choose open. And I've already imported this a couple times. We'll just give it a different name and say OK. Now, keep in mind that when I'm importing this SketchUp model, this process right now, I mean, I'm using SketchUp, and I'm heavy on SketchUp. Love that program, but Revit, Rhino, really any 3D modeling program will kick out a file, and this is right where you'd pick up. So if you want to follow along in the tutorials, definitely grab our SketchUp model because it's the exact same process, but just keep in mind that once it comes into Lumion, it's all the exact same. So let me just click to place that, and then I always go to my move mode, and I choose 0. I'm going to set this to a known position of 0, 5, 0. All right, so now here's my master suite SketchUp model. It's imported, and the reason it's so important to set this at a known point is because we're going to do a node placement later. So we're going to kind of create a placeholder SketchUp model that we can do a node placement in Lumion, and that way we can import it and set it at a very precise location and get things to line up perfectly without any guesswork. All right, so we've pulled in our SketchUp model, and at this point what we want to do is assign some textures. So I'm going to go over here to my materials, and we'll click on our glass and make sure we add some glass. We'll click on, let's see, what else are we going to do? Our curtains. This is a new feature in Lumion 7. I can make that a standard material, dial down the gloss and reflectivity, and then dial up my transparency. So you can give those curtains kind of a sheer look. And what else here? Let's see, we've got our hardwood floor. This one's kind of cool if I hit the hardwood floor and make it a standard material. Check that out. It's reflecting the sky even though I have a ceiling. Well, we can control that rather easily. Let me just drop a reflection ball over here. I'll go to Objects, Place Mode, Lights and Special Objects, and grab this from my Utilities, Reflection Control. Watch what happens when I place this reflection control ball on the bed. See, now I get those more realistic reflections. Although they're not as perfect as we can get, we'll get to that with effects, all right? But it still helps for right now. Okay, so what else? Then some other materials we could add. Easy enough, I can just like click on the vase, go to Glass Advanced. I like to dial up the relief. Like check this out, this is our pure glass. We can dial up the relief, dial down the scale, switch the RGB to something. So you can tweak a lot of these properties, get a lot of different effects. Very easy to texture up this model. But for our purposes today, I've got a material set. So I'm going to click on this wrench right here and choose Material Set, Load. And I'm going to go to my desktop, capturing Lumion Interiors, and there's our Master Suite material set. This way, I've already gone through and assigned all of these materials, so we don't have to go through and dial it up ourselves. So we'll just load that up. Keep in mind that a material set can be used if you're using like the same materials over and over in any of your 3D modeling programs, whether it's SketchUp or Revit or any of them. If you're using the exact same material name, so if you already have a library in your 3D modeling program, you can then apply the Lumion, swap the Lumion textures and save it out as a material set. So once you get all those dialed in, you just load your material set and you're good to go. So it's important to be aware of all these different ways to cut corners and speed things up. All right, so there's our material set that comes in. We've got our frosty vase there. It's got some relief to it. Everything looks pretty good. I think we're in good shape. All right, so I'm going to click on Save to choose OK. But here's the thing. What bugs me is that when I look outside here, I can see the horizon. And that bugs me with any rendering. So we're going to craft the environment. All right, so we're going to make this kind of a beach scenario here. I'm going to go to my landscape tools, and we're going to go to ocean and turn on the ocean. All right, so that's one thing about Lumion. I did mention we got to do some exteriors just a little bit just to make the interior look good. All right, so there's our ocean. I'll go to my height tool, and here's our raise tool. I'll dial up the brush size and the brush speed just a little bit. And then I'm just going to create a little island here and just kind of click and drag like this. Let me flatten that. Let's flatten that, and let me do my raise again and dial down that brush speed just a little bit too much. All right, like that. And then let's just create this little island here. Something like that. Looks good. Cool. All right, then I can go to my paint tool, and I can dial up my brush speed here, and I can just kind of paint the beach on there like that. Go plenty of that. So we want to see plenty of sand and water. That looks good, and maybe like that. And keep in mind that as we look out, these are our windows here, and then we also have windows over on this side. So I want to make sure I get like a nice scenic view over here. So I think what we'll do is go to Objects and choose Nature under Place Mode. And check this out. We've got so many trees. Lumion 7 came out with even more trees. But each one of these major tabs has several sub-tabs. We can even type in here and search for like an oak tree or an elm tree. Elm tree, yeah, there you go. Elm tree or a palm tree. All right, so we'll just grab a palm tree. I'm gonna go with this Areca palm, and you can click to place a few like that, and check it out. These guys are all blowing in the breeze. They are totally optimized. Do not slow down. So I can just hold control and drop several trees at once. So really create that whole island effect going on. And I can go back to my trees and maybe grab this other palm, and like that. That looks good. Okay. And then let's grab one more smaller palm, like this Chinese fan palm. That way we got some different levels of vegetation happening. And I think I'll even go to transportation and maybe grab like this boat here. So that's going to be kind of sitting out. Like if I'm looking out this window, I can place that boat there. Hold the R key and I can rotate it to get a nice shot of that. And then over here, I might grab another sailboat and we'll place that one right there. Hold R and maybe rotate that around. See what that looks like. All right, so let's go back into our master suite here and take a look. And look at that. So now when we look out the window, we've got some sand, we got some water, we got some palm trees, a much more convincing environment rather than just seeing the horizon. So that's one tip for rendering is anytime you can, just mask that horizon line. When you see that, that's the first tell that like this is a computer generated image. So we've got our environment, and so I think now we are ready to just about ready to add some lights. Let me show you a few tips on layers. Before we move on, I want to keep my model organized, all right? So I'm just going to click on Move Mode, and with my context menu, I'm going to click on any plant, choose Selection, and choose Select All Similar Category. So Lumion makes it very easy to then move this to like landscape trees. I click on the layer number and then click on this little up symbol, and now my trees are controlled like that with my layer. All right, I'll click on this boat and choose selection, select all similar category. So let's see, I think I actually still had my other boat selected, so let me deselect all, and I'm going to select this guy, hold control, select that guy, and then I'm going to go to entourage, what do I call it? Entourage generic. All right, so we're going to put that over there. All right, so now your entourage is controlled. So the nice thing about Lumion is they really do make it very easy to control to make those selections after the fact. So if you're not hung up on what's your active layer and where you're placing things, it's easy enough to go back and piece them back together. But I find it's kind of handy to keep up on that. Okay, so this brings us to lighting in Lumion. There are basically two approaches to lighting. So you've got an accurate approach and you've got an artistic approach. So an accurate approach would be like to place a Lumion light source at every single light on your lighting plan. So like every can light gets a spotlight, just being very accurate with and very literal. So the other way to approach lighting is from an artistic approach, and that's very not literal, right? Where we're just going to kind of like put some lights in and light it up and make it look good. But I found that taking those two different approaches and kind of playing with the different ideas of artistic versus accurate lighting, I found that of course there's like a very happy medium where you can create a blend of accurate and artistic lighting that both leverages your system in the right way, is not like taxing your graphics card. It also looks good. It's predictable, so you can kind of do it the same way every time. So that's what I want to show you now is placing all of these different Lumion lights and really getting to a point where we can render this thing. So let's do that. All right. So I'm going to go to my spotlight here. I'll go ahead and say objects. We'll go to place mode. And under lights and special objects, I'm going to click on my spotlights. All right, so we want to add 2 spotlights for our lamp. Okay, so whenever I choose a spotlight, I choose something that's got like kind of a decent throw. Like Like this lamp 12 looks good. Now here's a tip. If I click and drag, I can actually set the height on when I place that, all right? Like that. Perfect. All right, so now I'm gonna kind of go over to the other side like this, navigate over here, and again, I'm going to click and drag like that. And then I'm gonna scoot back and let's see, I'm gonna tap escape to remove that place mode, hold control and click on this lamp. And let me do a context menu, transformation, and choose same height. All right, so that sets these guys at the exact same height. Next, I can use my move tool or my height tool and kind of scoot that around. The other thing I can do is hold Alt. If I hold Alt, I can actually make a copy of both of those lights, go to my rotate tool, under move mode, rotate, and I can rotate the pitch so that these lights are facing up at -90, like that, all right? And then I might even go back and say like, all right, so this guy needs to kind of come down just a touch. And see, if I go too far, you can see that the shadow starts casting from that lampshade. That may or may not be a good thing. I'm not sure. I think I'm gonna avoid it for now. All right, so there's my, all of my, my two spotlights are in there for each of my lamps. And then I'm gonna filter out my nature so that I, nature and transportation. That way I can't like accidentally grab anything. All right, so now I'm gonna select all of these guys, all right? So these are my my 4 spotlights. And something that I really picked up on when I was working through these different lighting tests is that if I look at the properties, when I place these lights, the brightness of these lights is set to 300. Now, what I came to find out is that 300 is actually a little bit too bright. It seems like more in the realm of like 50. I mean, like, look at, if I go all the way to 0 or 1 and just start inching up, at what point do I actually notice those lights, you know? And at what point do they become like really bright? So it kind of jumps rather quickly from like 100 to like 500. So really, what I found is to be very subtle with your lighting. So maybe start with like 75, maybe even like 50. Let's just do 50 because we do get some lighting on there. And so rather than like, my first approach was always to dial it up, and like what happened is I would get into this kind of battle between the lights where I dial one light up to 800, then this other light had to be set to 1200 in order to show up. And next thing you know, I've got my image so like washed out that it was hard to really understand what I was even tweaking and what was happening. So I found that if you keep your brightness values low, it really makes it much easier to make those subtle tweaks that actually make a difference. All right, so there's my my spotlights, and we're good there. You know, one of the other light sources I didn't mention was I was going to mention this first, the sun. Let's just get that sun kind of casting in there. That's available on our weather tab. All right, so I can kind of scoot around. I can drop the angle of the sun. There we go. So now we've got like some light casting through, something like that. That looks good. All right. So anyway, back to our spotlights, all right? So these spotlights are set up. The other spotlights we want to add are up here in our ceiling, all right? So I can go back here and go to my objects under place mode and choose maybe a different spotlight. I'll go with like lamp 3. And again, I can click and drag and kind of set it down and see, I want to make sure that I get below that line there, because look what happens. You see those really like harsh shadows? Well, see, if I were to pull this down just a touch, see, it gets real soft because now it's not casting a shadow out of there. So here's the thing about can lights though, is that I think they should be placed very accurately. The spotlights that I put in for the lamps, I'm okay with those being close to centered because it's just kind of making it glow over there, all right? And then, but these spotlights, I really want those to be placed accurately. So what I would do is in my 3D modeling program, I would create some placeholders. All right, so if I go to my layers and go to always off, you can see that I've created these little triangles here. And I made this like kind of placeholder for these lamps. The critical thing here is that the origin point is at the point of that triangle. All right, so then what you can do is take this thing, this will work in any of those 3D modeling programs, and save this out. So I'm going to save this as, and I'm going to put it in my, I'll just put it in my desktop temp, and we're going to call this Master Suite lights. All right, so I'll save this. So now what I can do is go back into Lumion in build mode. All right, I'm going to go to my place mode. So place mode, we're going to place a new import, and we're going to go with a new import. And here's my lights. So I'll choose open, and let me just give that a different name, say okay. All right, so then I'm going to click to place them. Immediately then go to move and choose 0, 5, and 0. See, now those all line up. So this is why it's so important to set your model at a known origin point, because it makes just patching in these other pieces just effortless, right? All right, so now we've got that set up. I've got my, I've already got a library selection for my light. So I can go to my context menu, and I'm going to click on the context menu, and I'm going to choose extra, place item on nodes, place current light on nodes, like that. All right, now check this out. So if I go in here, let me delete this actually. We're done with this. So I can just go ahead and use my eraser tool and delete that placeholder, because now the job is done and we've got all of our spotlights in there, okay? So let me do a selection here. I'm gonna hit selection, select all similar, like that. And see, we didn't grab these other lamps, so that's good. All right, so now all these guys, I need to rotate their pitch. So I need to go to move mode, rotate, and rotate the pitch so it's like facing down at the floor, right? So I'm gonna make that exactly 90 degrees. Perfect. I can also go to edit properties, and you can see that the brightness is at 300. So like, look at how, you know, that seems like rather washed out. So let me double click on this. You can double click on any of these sliders in Lumion and hit backspace. And, you know, maybe we try like 100, or, you know, let's just kind of slide this thing around. So here's 0. As I start inching forward, you know, right around, seems like around 50, it makes like an actual impact. And around 100, it's glowing pretty bright. So I might stick with like 75, all right, for this light source. So again, keep the lights low. All right, so that looks good. You can see that all these light sources were placed with that absolute mathematic perfection, right? Right in the center, in good shape. And let's see, I've actually got 2 light sources there. So this one came in with 2. Oh, undo that. And that's not going to be critical, but oh, that was one I placed. Yeah, okay. So that was, we'll just delete that one out of there. We're good to go. All right. So here's the thing though. I use that node placement here for my line lights too. So let me show you another trick. I can select these cove lights that I made. All right. So I don't want those to be spotlights. A line light is much better suited for cove lighting. All right, so then I can go back to place mode, and I can go to lights and special objects and make sure that a line light is active on my library selection. All right, then I go to my context menu and click on my selection, and I'm going to choose selection library, replace with library selection. And then just like that, I can go, let me do another selection here. I'll go selection, select all similar, and see now I've got my 4 line lights placed with absolute perfection. Here's the thing about line lights or cove lights. If you don't place those perfect in there, you know, the spotlights, we could probably get by, like you wouldn't notice that it's not perfect, but it's kind of a tedious task to go and place them all. But with the line lights, if we don't place those perfectly and have them all at the exact same like symmetrical location, well, that like glowing effect in that tray ceiling is not gonna like, it's not gonna give us the effect we want. It's gonna be off center. It's gonna be hard to get it perfect. I just want it to be perfect the first time, so that's why I use that node placement. All right, so you can see here we're on our properties, and I can choose to, you know, slide that width. See, I want to get this edge of that line light over here to the end, so I'll just slide the width over there, and we can also take a look over here. Oh, and you know what? They're facing the wrong way. So let me adjust my pitch, and the pitch is going to face them right up at the ceiling like that. They're all selected still. All right, so we get that nice glow. All right, so we got the two on the ends are good, but the ones in the middle need to be rotated. All right, so let me, I'm gonna hold Control and click on this one to deselect it, hold Control and click on this one to deselect it, and for this guy, I'm gonna adjust their heading. So we'll put their heading at like -90, all right? Now you can see that's affecting both of these. And then I can go back to their properties and adjust their width. Again, I just kind of want these guys to just, I don't know that I want them to like overlap completely, but something like that. You can see what's happening there. That looks like it's about right. So, cool, there we go. So, yeah, good enough. But look at that cove lighting. See, it's glowing, and again, it's probably just a little bit too bright. So I'm going to select all similar. All right, so grab all those guys. Go to my properties, and we're going to adjust our brightness from 1,000. Let's go all the way down to 0, and then just see where does this start to have an effect. So like, it seems like by 100, 100 is bright, 75 is pretty good. Let's go with we'll go with 100. All right, like that. Okay, perfect. All right, so now we've got our cove lighting in there, and see how that all fits just so nice. All right, so it's important to have that placed perfectly. So far we've looked at the sun, we've looked at our spotlights, our line lights. Up next is our omni lights. Now, the best use of an omni light, I find, is to kind of, one, you could put it in the middle of the room and just kind of explode light everywhere, right? That's one way you could use it. That's definitely a more artistic approach. I would prefer to just use omni lights more specifically to brighten up my lamps, okay? So any of these like critical light sources, I might go drop an omni light over there, okay? So to do that, again, I like to be clever with my selection. So maybe I would go to like move mode, make sure I've cleared my selection by clicking on that guy. And then I would select this top one here, and I would select the top one here. And then I'm going to use my height tool, and I'm going to hold Alt and click and drag and move those up. All right, and then I'm going to go to place mode and select my omni light from my library. So not a light fill, we want a just a white omni light. All right. And then I'm going to go to select on my context menu and choose selection, library, replace with library selection. So now what I've got are omni lights. So you can see the properties showing up. This tells me it's an omni light. These are the properties. And I can hold Control and select this one as well. So I'm editing both of these guys at the same time. And actually maybe I would want to move that down just a touch. I don't know. But check out the brightness. See how if it goes too bright, it's just like competing with the scalloping effect of the lamp? So if I go down to 0 and just inch up, and where does it start to make a difference? So like right around, it seems like these need a little more juice on them, like right around 1,000. It seems to be right. So I'll double click on that slider and then type 1,000. All right, so now my omni lights are set to 1,000. Those look good, all right? So that way, we've got a couple different lights that are really affecting that light source. So we've got the spotlights, the omni lights, and then the last thing we're gonna do with our lamps is dial them up with some emissive materials, all right? So let's keep working on our lamps for a moment. Check this out. So I'll say we're good there. I'm gonna go to my materials and see I've got a light bulb here. I can click on that light bulb and I can go to standard, make that a standard material, and go to my settings down here and dial up my emissiveness of that bulb, all right? Remember, emissive materials don't actually throw light, they don't cast shadows, they will project light if they're seen. But again, I want to be kind of timid with this, so it seems to me that a bulb on the emissive scale can be at about 10. So let me just back that up and hit 10. That seems to be enough. And check this out, my lampshade. I can click on the lampshade, and let's back off on our gloss and our reflectivity here. I can give the lampshade an emissive property, just a little bit to give it that glow. All right, so I'm going to double click on that slider and hit backspace, make it 0.15. All right, so that way it's going to be kind of glowing in the scene. All right, so you can see both of those got picked up on that. All right, so we've got our light bulb and our lampshade. Another really good use of emissive materials is in these can lights. Check this out though. Let me say OK or save. I want to turn on the light source on my can lights here. So I'm going to go to move mode, and I'm going to select all similar and make sure, okay, grabbed, or I had those selected. Let me hit that again. It's always good to deselect before you do one of these selections. Select all similar. So that time it did not, I've got everything deselected. I've only selected those 6 spotlights up high. I'm going to edit their properties and choose show light source should be on. Okay. All right, so then I can go back here and deselect that and get back to my materials. So when you can see the light source, you can you see the light source. It's going to actually have like a glow to it. But I don't want to have that glow happening just in that one little point. So what I do is I add a material to my can lights, and now I can make that an emissive material. So I can dial that up. And what's kind of cool is that it starts to just make the whole thing glow. Gives it a good effect, right? So, and those light sources, those will kind of fade out when we render. All right, but let's make sure that we don't go nuts on that emissive material. It seems like for our can lights, we can still keep that emissiveness down to about 10. All right, so I'll just double click on that slider and give it a precise value of 10. So the nice thing about those emissive materials is we can really dial those up with our effects. So that's why it's important to not go overboard on the lighting brightness settings, because then you have more control with your effects. All right, let's see. Let's do one more light bulb over here. I'll just kind of click on this guy, make it standard, and dial up my emissiveness. Again, I like to be very precise, make it 10. And maybe I'd even say OK, and I might even go into our objects and place mode and place another spotlight. Check this out. I can place a spotlight in here. I might just click and drag, and that way, this really illustrates the idea that a spotlight is the only light source that casts those shadows like that. The sun and spotlights. But then let's see. I can hold the Alt key and make a copy. And this guy, I'm going to hit this target light, and I'm just going to click up here, and that's going to reorient that light to where I clicked. That's kind of a cool feature too. So we'll just put this one down low a little bit. So that looks pretty good. So this way we're kind of getting a nice lighting demonstration in here. We've got our cove lights, our can lights, we've got our lamps, and we've got kind of a funky lamp over there. All right. Oh, one other comment about emissive materials. I almost forgot. This TV, it's killer. You can just go ahead and say this image is going to be a standard material. I'll leave its gloss and reflectivity, but let's just dial up its emissiveness to a 0.1. So if I just say 0.1, it just makes that TV just glow a little bit and gives it the feeling that it's on. Okay, that helps a lot for selling the realism. All right. So looks like we're in pretty good shape. At this point, we need to start working with Lumion effects. So there's 3 different categories of effects that I came up with for Lumion. And one, we've got our standard effects, we've got stylistic effects, and we've got our pre-processing effects. So standard effects are those effects that you're going to add to every single scene. Basically, effects are they're hard to explain. I mean, you can set a camera view, but then you add these different, it's almost like a style in SketchUp or like a different lens for looking at the geometry. It does different things. But anyways, standard effects like sun, shadows, reflections, global illumination, exposure, those are things that we add to every single image we put out. Stylistic effects like lens flare, volumetric sunlight, depth of field, those are stylistic effects. Those are your choice. You can develop your own style. I'm going to kind of over stylize this image, but that's all right. You can choose to dial it down or dial it up, either way. And then we've got pre-processing effects. I call these pre-processing effects because normally in a rendering program, you would kick the image out, and then you'd have to send it to Photoshop and adjust the color, selective saturation or color correction, or even exposure, brightness of the image. We can do all that stuff before we render in Lumion, so that when we kick out our image, it's done. I don't want to post-process. I only pre-process. I actually make it a point to never send my images into Photoshop because all that does is adds another round of labor. Certainly if you have like that final polished image, yes, go nuts on it. But I find that for the most part, we're churning out a lot of images and I need to just hit render and be done. So let's take a look at effects. So in Lumion, I can go over to my photo mode, photo studio, and let's just pick a view that's going to be maybe not the most artistic view, but it's going to just kind of grab, I want to make sure that I get all of our different light sources in here. So I've got like my cove lighting, I've got my can lighting, I've got my lamps. That looks pretty good. And we've got the sunshine casting on the bed. So I'm going to store that camera. All right, so I just click on Store Camera, and now we can start adding effects. So the standard effects that I add first are going to be like the sun. So I'd add the sun effect, and then I can adjust the sun heading. I can choose whether I want that coming in the other window. I might work with it on that window there, like that. The sun brightness I usually don't mess with. The sun height, you might want to tweak that so it's like shining in your space real nice. Let's add another effect, shadows. Shadows, whenever I add the shadows, I always dial up my Omni shadows all the way. And see what they're doing? It kind of gives that like that HDR effect, like that more dramatic shading, right? So I always dial up Omni shadow, and then I would always go for a slower render speed for super detail on my shadows. All right, let's go to reflections. These are critical reflections. When I add that reflection effect, I need to hit edit. And now I can go in here and I can actually edit all of my, or add all of these planar reflections. All right, so I'm going to just add those. I'm going to go a little bit crazy on this, make sure that all my windows and my artwork in here has a reflection plane on it. All right, so there, scoot over here, and we'll add one on this art piece, and add another one here, and we'll add one more here. All right, so now all of my reflective surfaces, maybe one more in this window just for good measure. All of my reflective surfaces have a reflection plane on them. I think we're in good shape. I'll say OK. And then let's get back to that camera view. All right, so then again, maybe I want to like just scoot down. I think we're seeing enough of that reflection down there, so that looks good. I'll update my camera. Now, the other thing about your reflections effect or reflection effect is speed ray reflections. I can turn those on. And you might have noticed that this fan just got a little dialed up. This just kind of takes those like generic reflections and really turns them up and makes them better. So I always turn that on too. Preview quality, we'll leave it at medium. That looks good. I want to make sure we can see what we're doing here. Okay, global illumination. I'm going to add that effect. We'll go to global illumination. And now, once I've added that, I'm going to hit edit, and I need to select the lights. Now, in Lumion 7, it would still show up with Omni lights, but it looks like that's been changed. So now we can actually select, let me grab this guy here, like that. We are only shown our spotlights. So basically, what that means is that spotlights are the only light source that are calculated by your global illumination. So I like to just select all my spotlights, and I kind of put these like right on top of each other, didn't I? Like that. Okay, so I've selected all of my spotlights. That means that when these things are projecting light into the scene, that light will kind of bounce around and give me a more realistic render. All right, so I'll say okay. All right. And back to that image, we do have preview those on. If your machine is bogging down, you could definitely knock the preview quality to low and the preview for global illumination turned off. The last thing I'll add here is going to be our exposure. I'll go to camera and choose exposure. And for this one, I think that underexposing is pretty much, it seems to always be, it gets a better look. So remember, we're going really low on our light brightness settings, and we're even going to underexpose just a little bit, okay? All right, so this looks good enough. Let's render it and see what we got. So I'm going to send this to my desktop temp folder. I'm going to call this image 1.1 and hit go. And let's just take a look and see what happens. All right, so we're gonna give 16 passes on this JPEG. And so right away you can see that, like, even though it was underexposed, it's not as dark as it would appear in that first image, all right? And as I'm looking at this, you can see that our can lights are not quite getting the full glow effect. Maybe eventually we're gonna add some other light fills in here too. But in general, I mean, this image, if I go look at my desktop, temp, and here's image 1.1, that is not a bad first round just to kind of get that image looking right and lit up properly. So pretty satisfied with that one. So I think at this point, what we'll do is we'll leave this image alone and we're gonna go back and add our stylistic effects. Now remember, stylistic effects are gonna be those more the bells and whistles that make the image kind of look like your own. All right, so let's do that. So some stylistic effects that I like to add are lens flare. So I'll click on New Effect, add the lens flare. And lens flare, the best way to use this one is to dial up the master brightness like way high. All right. And you know what? For this one, I am going to go back and turn off. I'm going to set my reflections to low, and I'm going to turn off that preview. And that's going to make things go way faster. See, look at that. Now I can adjust these guys. I can dial up the master brightness, take the bloom amount down just a little bit lower, and you can see this is 0. What I want it to do is bloom just enough to hide all of those light sources, all right? So like that looks pretty good. I think that's about where I want it. And then you can, of course, jack up the streak count. Streak intensity is pretty straightforward. Streak rotation, no big deal. Okay, so maybe just a little less bloom. Perfect. I like that. Okay, let's add another effect. Up next is going to be our volumetric sunlight. That's under weather. So here's our volumetric sunlight. Now, volumetric sunlight, if I dial up the brightness just a little, well, we'll just go nuts on it. And I might have to, yeah, see, I might have to have my global illumination on for this. Let's see. Brightness. Yeah, you can kind of see the sunlight. It's like that heavy sunlight coming in, so we're not going to go too crazy on this. I can see it on my screen. I don't know if that's coming through real clear for you guys, but we'll dial that range. It seemed to me that the range should be very, very low. So I put it all the way back to 0, hold shift, and then start moving to the right until I can just see my sunlight turn on or get kind of heavy without making the background super hazy. So remember, if you hold shift on any of those sliders, it'll go really slow. Okay, so that's our volumetric sunlight. Now check this out. The walls are not in line with the frame of my shot. I really like to add 2-point perspective. That's a camera effect. So go to 2-point perspective, turn that on. Everything gets lined up so all the verticals are straight up and down. That's an easy one. We can also go to depth of field. That's another camera effect. Under depth of field, we can hit autofocus on and hit edit like that. And then I'll just click on that pillow there because that's where I want my camera to focus. And then I can dial up the amount and see, you can really start to see like how out of focus the rest of the room gets, and you can control whether you want that to blur the foreground or the background. So really what I want to see is that this dresser and this plant piece there are just a little out of focus. Maybe the palm trees are a little out of focus. Looks good to me. All right, so then the last thing I'm going to add here is going to be bloom. And we did use a bit of bloom. That's a style effect. Click on bloom and just back that all the way down. And then maybe I'll just inch it forward until I barely see it make a difference. But I could take or leave bloom. It seems like lens flare was adding some of that already. All right. So let's see where this gets us. Usually the bloom, it doesn't show up as bright in the preview as it will in the render. So I'm just going to back that off just a touch. So we'll do 1920 by 1080. I'm going to call this image 1.2. Like that. And let's let this one render out. And you can see again that Lumion is rendering rather quickly. 16 passes on this. We may have nailed this one again. photorealistic effect. So you can see it's got the lens flare, a little bit more of a hazy, dreamy look to it, all right? So now at this point, we can add some pre-processing effects. Again, rather than sending this image into Photoshop and adjusting the color correction, all that stuff, which the whole idea behind pre-processing is that if you send it to Photoshop and make all those changes, when you render again, when you make changes to the model and have to re-render, you're gonna have to redo that post-processing. So what's important is that we pre-process in Lumion and ideally eliminate the need for post-processing. So let's do that. I'm gonna close this, go back into Lumion here, and we'll click on New Effect. I'm gonna go to, we're gonna add some noise. That's artistic effect. We'll add noise. And whenever I add noise, the intensity should be kind of lower. You can see, you know, it doesn't need a ton of that action. And, you know, the size, maybe this actually makes it bigger, but maybe I make it just a touch bigger, like that. So noise, I'm gonna add some sharpness just because we wanna see like all these different kind of Photoshop commands happening. So we can see the intensity there. You know, I don't want a ton of intensity on that, just a touch of it, just a dash in this recipe. We'll go to selective saturation, like that. Now selective saturation, really what I've been using this one for is more of just to desaturate the image. I don't know, it's another Photoshop type command. You can slide these around, choose these different values, get different effects out of it, but really I just like to desaturate it, just kind of bring that down a bit. So that's really all I use that one for. And then color correction, that's this one over here. Now here's a little trick with color correction, all right? If I underexpose the image with the exposure slider, and then back down the maximum slider on my color correction, I can kind of get a little bit more of a photorealistic effect, all right? So I'm gonna go back over here to my exposure, and I'm gonna knock that down to like, I will say 0.3, so it looks pretty dark, right? Then I'm gonna go back to maximum, and I'm gonna dial the maximum down until it kind of comes back into play there. And less is more with any of these effects, really. I don't wanna go too crazy. Like if I go all the way here, you can see what happens with that. So really, I want to just kind of take it from 0 and back it down just a little bit. And we'll render it and see what happens, all right? Next is our Analog Color Lab. Tip on Analog Color Lab, I'm going to dial the amount way up, and you can see that we've got all these different styles. If you're using all these different effects, don't use a huge amount of Analog Color Lab. Also, Analog Color Lab, it's kind of like that Instagram, that instant effect, that instant filter that you can throw on your image. You might even consider the Analog Color Lab like the easy button. So like instead of doing all this tweaking, just add the Analog Color Lab and just dial that up and see if that gets you to where you want. But anyway, I use just a little bit just to kind of mix it all up. And I use the style called, it's on 1.1. All right, now the last piece of this is to make this image mine. Again, a total Photoshop process is to add an image overlay or overlay image. All right, so I'll add that effect, click on that choose file, go to desktop, and here I've got my overlay image, and you can see it drops that right into my image, and I can even fade it out. All right, so just give a little bit of a watermark. All right, so at this point, I'm going to render this, and we're going to call this image 1.3. And let's see where we get with this. So you can imagine that the ability to just do all of these pre-processing effects and eliminating one more program from your workflow, it's a huge time savings, especially if you're like that looks good. Yeah, it's the right brightness. I think we got that right. But especially if you're a designer and you're making lots of changes, you really don't want to have to post-process. It's ideal just to hit it once and be done. Let's see. So here's image 1.1. Here's image 1.2. And then image 1.3. Cool. So I think that if I had a few comments about this, I would say maybe we need some light fills. So like I would add some light fills to like these areas down low like on my dresser and on the bed. So let's do that real quick. I'll just go into build mode and choose objects, select objects, Omni-Light, and here's my light fill. All right, so I can just kind of click on a few of these different places here and add those light fills. And I'm going to select my light fills. I'm going to hit deselect all and then select all similar. So I've grabbed all those light fills, and see those are at 1500. I think maybe 500 is about right for that light fill. All right, and we're going to render this one as image 1.4. So let's render this one more time and call this 1.4. All right. So while this one renders, let me also make a few comments about revision. So like if we wanted to go back into our SketchUp model and make some changes, and doesn't matter, you use Revit, use Rhino, any of these 3D modeling programs, it's all going to work exactly the same as what I'm showing you. So we're going to go back into SketchUp and let's try a different color scheme. These paintings are actually from a friend of mine, Dennis Wright. He let me use those images to create some other tutorials. So those are coming soon, but I want to pull some colors from those images and use that in my color scheme. And then I think I'll also adjust this arch or this opening and recenter some of these paintings as well. And we're going to save it, reload it, re-render it, and we're going to wrap things up. So check this out. I'll go back into my model. And so in SketchUp, I can just go in here and I can say like, all right, so let me take this wall color and I'm going to edit that wall color and I'm going to match it to a color on my screen, like this piece of the painting. All right. And then I'm going to take like my pillows and I'm going to do the same thing. I'll just kind of grab different pieces, different of the blues out of here. So just sampling these materials and grabbing different shades of blue like that. And we got two more pillows, and like that one in the middle. I don't know, that one didn't quite work out. One again. Let's hit this. All right, so there's a bedspread. Again, maybe I'll pull from here, get a dark bedspread, and it's got like white and tan sheets. I think I want to adjust this wood to be maybe like a little desaturated and darker, like that. And then, as I mentioned, like if I want to edit this opening, what I would do, if I just click in here, I can pull this opening out by 18 inches. And then I can back out and see I just need to adjust my trim like this. I'll move that by 18 inches and adjust this other piece of trim, 18. And then these two pieces right here, I'm going to pull this out by 18 and pull this one out by 18. So we make all those different corrections like that, and we're good to go. So we've kind of changed the actual model, and keep in mind that making these changes, we're going to adjust not only the visualization that's happening in Lumion, but this model is actually creating our construction documents and our presentation packets. So one model for everything. Let's see, I think I'll also grab color off there. That looks pretty good. All right, and then one last change. I want to match this one to the same cabinets, and as promised, I think we'll kind of change some of these paintings. We'll just kind of scoot that over here. And since I made this wall bigger, I'm going to scoot this painting over like that. All right, so now all I have to do is hit File and choose Save. Hop back into Lumion, go into Build Mode. I always like to use my Materials tab and click on this wrench here and choose Reload Model. So I'll click Reload Model. It's going to re-import, and as long as I didn't change any of the material names, all of that geometry comes right back in here rather quickly. See, I've got my wall adjusted, I've got my painting scooted around, all of my different color scheme is all set up, and now all I have to do is go back into photo mode, and let's create some other renderings here. So I would hit render, but what I want to do is actually just create two more renderings, and then we're going to use an effect stack and call it good. All right. So check this out. If I want to make another view of this, I can just click on this wrench here and choose File, Save. I can save this to my desktop as like BD_photoreal interior. All right, like that. And then I'm going to scoot over here and let's just set up another view. This is an effect stack, I'm going to go to this next camera, and I'm going to click on this wrench here. So rather than adding all of those effects manually, I can go to File and choose Load and load up that effect stack. Just one more. I'll go over here, start a new camera, and let's just kind of look back over here. And I don't know, something will catch that other sailboat out the window. That looks good to me. Click on here, File, Load, grab that. And then my depth of field, I need to hit Edit and just set that to be focused on my chair. Perfect. Okay, and make sure we save that camera view like that. So looks good. We've got 3 different cameras. I can choose to save the photo set. I can turn that on and then hit Render to Desktop. And I'm going to call this Option 2, space, and hit Enter. So with that batch render, what's going to happen now? We've made our revisions. We've created our three camera views. It's going to start rendering and kick this thing out. So let's see, where does that bring us? Kind of getting close on time here, if not past. But you can see that really Lumion's extremely fast. It's very capable with these interiors. So I do hope that you have a better understanding of lighting in Lumion, lighting interiors, rendering with effects, and realize that you can get these beautiful results for interiors with Lumion. So when you're working though, keep these pointers in mind. Utilize the right light source in the right place. So always go back to that blog post and make sure that you're aware that there's a place where spotlights are better used rather than omni lights versus light fills, and you really understand all the different properties. Take a moment to actually download that lighting study and mess with it yourself. Also, don't take a rigid approach to lighting. Don't say like, hey, this has to match my lighting plan perfectly. And also don't take too loose of an approach either. If you take a loose approach, then you're not going to get the control you want out of the image. So take that hybrid approach, and remember too, we're not like creating we're not like analyzing daylighting in this model. We're creating a pretty picture. So just do what looks good. So using the right blend of standard, stylistic, and pre-processing effects, that's important. And it's also important to cut corners and expedite the process wherever you can. So once you develop your own effect stack, make sure that you do save it for later use. You can share it with your team. You can even develop like your company's like look, so the visual style, and just say, hey, everybody use this. This is the starting point. So highly recommend give it a shot with our new course. We have this SketchUp for Professionals course. Let me back this out here. Zoom out here. So this is our Capturing Lumion Interiors. We've definitely linked to this quite a bit on our event page and through our blog and social media, but this is where you can grab all of those different resources and you can access this SketchUp for Professionals. So we can say, you can check out our course to start learning SketchUp on your own. So Chapter 9 is a full 2 hours of Lumion tutorials. Chapter 8 is where we're going to walk you through actually building that model. If you want to learn SketchUp the right way, there's no better place to start than that SketchUp for Professionals. So as usual, we do appreciate you signing up and sign up for our newsletter, liking us on social media, and certainly sharing our events and our webinars and any of our blog posts. Basically, if you know somebody who'd be interested in any of this content or this presentation, please do share it. That is truly what keeps us going. Again, I'm Mike Brightman with Brightman Designs. We offer design, drafting, visualization, and workflow training services. So check us out at brightmandesigns.com, and I sincerely look forward to working with you in the future, and thank you so much for watching today. So at this point, hopefully that was helpful, and I would love to see some questions. So let me hop over here to our event page and take a look. All right, so let's see. Okay. All right, so let me just see. Let's see. Can you copy paste that blog link about lighting? Yeah, let me do that for you. So let me copy this, and certainly if anybody's on the run here and doesn't have questions, then I'd I'd say you're dismissed or whatever. But thank you for coming. But if you have questions, stick around. I'll try to answer these for a couple minutes here. So let me see. Let me get back here. I'm going to paste this in. All right, maybe Luke already did that, but here's our post. Okay, so here's a question. Do you guys normally make custom materials or just tweak the nature, outdoor, and indoor materials? So that's a great question. One resource that I found is, and this would be good for anyone, SketchUp Texture Club. These guys have made some fantastic textures. They call it SketchUp Texture Club. They're just textures. They're seamless images. So this is a great resource to texture up your model. And what I like to do is use these, and then when they come into Lumion, I make them a standard material. And then that way I can control all those Lumion properties of the one that I'm importing. So typically, I would actually say the only Lumion materials that I use are glass, grass, and water. Those are kind of the only ones that are like specific to Lumion. I do use some of the other aged materials, but I think that you can just kind of make your own too. So this is a great resource for grabbing those, but I know there's a ton of others, but these guys are like $13 a year, and they have a ton of content on here. Let's see, let me get back here to our event. Why do I keep losing that? Awesome. Yeah, thanks for the positive feedback. Here's that one. I pasted that link in, and so how did you select the material in SketchUp with the eyedropper? So there's a shortcut in SketchUp. If you have the paint bucket tool active, you can hold Alt, or I think that's Command on the Mac, and that's going to sample different materials in your model. So it's making them active. And then the other thing I was doing is, like, when I sampled, I sampled this pillow, and then I want to choose either to match color of object in model or match color on screen. So if I match color on screen, I can just kind of like pick a pixel, it'll match it. So that's really what was ideal back here. If you do matching the color of an object, I want to say it takes like an average of all the color. That one I'm not as clear on as to what it's actually doing, but if you want to kind of match like two different materials, this is the button to hit. So ended kind of suddenly. Sorry about that. All right. Jonathan Whitso got some positive comments for me. I'll move on. Is it possible to have 2-point perspective? So yes, that's an effect on there. We did cover that. It's also possible in SketchUp. You can set that camera 2-point perspective, but in Lumion it's just an effect under cameras. Yes, we will definitely have this entire webinar up for after the question. So global illumination effect. So that one. It took some studying on. I don't know that I'm like totally there yet with mastering the global illumination. The sun part of global illumination is what throws me off. So if I go into Lumion and look at this first one and take a look at like, where's our global illumination? So we've got like the sun amount. You can choose how much sun is coming into the room, all right? This is my best understanding of it. And the max effect distance is like how far into that room it's gonna go. But like honestly, you can see it like flickering around like this, and I just found that like I couldn't really understand what I was gaining by doing this, and it was kind of like making these weird tones. So I just tend to like leave that backed off. I don't want it to turn that tinge of yellow. But anyway, so that's the sun amount, and the fall off speed is like how like at what point the sun dies, like there it's really bright, and so it's similar to like a light. You can get a better understanding of like a fall off setting on a spotlight. And then as far as like selecting your spotlights, remember the spotlights are the only ones that are calculated by that global illumination effect. And essentially it's just that light is bouncing around the room when global illumination is turned on. So that's my understanding. So maybe we could research more on that too. But it seems like this kind of straightforward approach is the best. Okay, yeah, Shannon, what's happening? Same question about good sources for models and textures. So definitely SketchUp Texture Club, and I can't recommend these guys enough either, is formfonts.com. These guys are fantastic. They have a ton of content out there. You can just search for like Audi, grab all these cars. Everything that these guys produce renders very nicely in Lumion. Also, I wrote a blog post on this too. If I go back over here to our blog, there's a blog post called Expanding Your Object Library. So let me find that one, and I'll throw this in the chat window too. So here it is, Expand Your Object Library. So this is a great blog post as well. Let's see, here's our event, and let me throw that in there too. All right, so let's see, where do we get to? All right, that was back to the beginning. Okay, Jennifer, double clicking on the slider, that is helpful, right? That's one of those buried little things, but there is no way to control the RGB factor. So basically, yeah, in Lumion, if I were to go over here to my material and like click here, and let's say I want to colorize it, well, I can't control this in any way. I was hoping I could just double click on it and get those RGB values, but that is not the case. But the good news is what I do is I leave these alone and I tweak them in SketchUp where I can control the RGB value. And then I just import it and let it just be in Lumion. So I think that's a better approach. And there is not a way to control the number of objects placed. I want to say it drops 10 at a time. I think that's like the default number, but I want to say that I've noticed that if you have different trees, it does different things. So anyways, yeah, that is not an option either. So any blogs on materials only? I have not, but I will tell you that the next course I'm creating, and probably the next webinar actually, is going to be using another one of our models from SketchUp for Professionals Advanced. And in that course, I've got a ton of stuff on materials. So we'll make sure to share some of those tutorials as well when we come out with that presentation, that webinar. All right, and then, so let's see, are there situations where two-point perspective is not advised? Well, if you get like up above if you get into a view that's not like from a human perspective, it seems like that two-point perspective starts to get really wonky. So it's not ideal for aerials, and really anything above like a human perspective, it wouldn't be advised. Oh yeah, the mask placement, you can adjust the amount of stuff along there. That is true, but when you're placing objects and you hold control, that you cannot change. I'll have to goof around. I'm going to look this one up. Bailey and Jesse mentioned you can control those copy and paste hexadecimal codes, like the hex code. So anyways, I'll look that up and see if we can't be more clear on that. The lighting node thing, so the idea there is that when you do a node placement, what you do is in SketchUp or in your modeling program, see what I did is I created this, like, essentially what I did, let me just delete this, all right? So what I do is I would just draw like a line here and like go straight up and just make this triangle. And then I would even like center this triangle like that. I would make this into a component, and I'd set my component axes right at the point, because right at the point where the axes are is right where my node placement is going to happen in Lumion. So I'll choose Create. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and, with my Move tool, I would make a copy of this over here, And let's see, I'm gonna have to hover, get my inference, and come over here, hover, get my inference, and then select all of these guys, and then use my move tool, make a copy, and hover and get my inference. So now I've got all those pieces there, and then I can make a selection like this and grab them all. And then I want to move them. So I want to move this straight down. You know, I don't want it to be like, you know, all the way down. I just got to kind of place this, and you'll get the hang of it. You know, you'll start to know, like, you know, should this sit right at the bottom there, or should I go like 2 inches up? All right, and then as far as like placing, let me scale those two. I'm just going to scale them so I can see them. All right, so those are all my node placements. And then I might even go in here and select like the ceiling. All right, and I might do an offset. So like for that ceiling, I'd offset to like, this is taking me to like maybe I might say like 1.25, like that. And then I would take that line that I just created, and I would do a copy straight down on the blue, and that says like, maybe I would do it like 3 inches or 2.5 inches. So see, now I've got this line work here, and I'm going to cut it, all right? And then I'm going to make this into a group, paste in place. So that's an edit, paste in place. So I'm just setting up all these placeholders, you know, so that I can go in here, and then I can use my move tool and make copies and say like, I want to place my line lights at my midpoints. So I'm snapping to my midpoints. So if I just take the time to do this in SketchUp in my 3D modeling program, it makes my life a lot easier once I get into Lumion. All right, now here's the last piece of creating this, is that this guy, this little chunk here, this group I made, that has to be a component. And its component axes need to be at the origin of the model, right there, like that. All right, I'll say create, because that way it's when I insert it into Lumion and put it at 0, 5, 0, it's going to line up exactly as it should. All right, and then from there you carry on like we did. So that's the idea. Works with any 3D modeling program. There's always different terminology as far as like components and axes, but you just got to get it set up like that. And then it's much easier, especially if you have a bigger lighting plan, rather than going in there and like trying to trying to place all those Lumion lights. That can be tricky. All right, so let's see. Let's see. So for all of our tutorials, check out our blog. So on the blog, we've got just a ton of like, still relevant tutorials. Some of them are from like Lumion 5, Lumion 4, 4, 5, 6, whatever. But they're still relevant. So highly recommend just going through the blog and check out all those, because a lot of them aren't just blog posts. There's also like a lot of tutorials associated with them. Also, check out our YouTube channel. If you guys are already on there, you can follow us there. All right, so let's see. I noticed that customized textures have some issues on interacting with lights if there's not like a proper normal map. Can I create a normal map from a texture I created myself? So definitely one way to do that is just click this Create Normal Map. So that is a button in Lumion. So like this is a SketchUp texture. I can click on Create Normal Map, and then the way to control that is with relief. And so sometimes it's kind of hard to see like the relief actually happening unless you have like some sunlight on it, or maybe a good preview, but I think I can see that happening. I'm gonna flip the direction. So anyway, that's one way to do it. All right, so then we should see like some nicer effects happening, with the normal map being applied there. Another way that you could create a normal map, actually I think I am seeing it pretty heavy down there. Another thing, I know there's like a Photoshop plugin that was totally free, and I'm not a professional on this one. Create normal map Photoshop. There's all kinds of tutorials on this, but I know that there was a plugin. I want to say it was NVIDIA. It was like an NVIDIA plugin, and it was really easy to just put it in there, create the normal map, and make it work. To me, I like the easy part. I don't want to get into Photoshop and tweak it for hours on end. I just want to like kind of have the easy button that gets me 90% of the way there. So I would check that out. I'm pretty sure it's NVIDIA put that out. Let's see. Okay, so then oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, that's place component to access origin. It's almost like a node placement in SketchUp before you do a node placement in Lumion. So that's a great comment there. Yeah, Tig's component access to. Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry. I know there's another, but that's a good one too. But I know there's another one where you could probably do like a node placement type effect in SketchUp. But that's a great point, Rao. I don't think you can use HDR skies. There's no like true setting for that. You need to use Lumion skies. There's no like import or anything like that. So, question about reflection control and all the different reflections. So, one, just a quick overview on that is, first off, under objects, we definitely want to have. So this is the reflection control ball. This is what's going to control kind of your generic reflections, all right? So if I scoot that up, let me deselect all. So you can kind of scoot that around. As I do that, you'll see that the reflections on the floor will be changing. All right, that's probably the easiest way to understand it, right? Okay, so that one's not really important because the truth is that we want speed ray reflections and we want planar reflections too. So those guys come in when you go into photo mode and then you click on reflections. So speed ray reflections need to be turned on. All right, so let me turn off my depth of field. We're just going to remove that for now because then we can like see like some of these guys. Oh, and here's our, see, this is where when I'm looking up, that 2-point perspective looks goofy. So let's turn that off. All right. Okay, so check out the fan blades. All right. Let's see if we can get this working without, let's see, reflection off. So we need to see like a reflection happening here. Okay, so I noticed that the fan blades were really happening. Now, speed ray reflections are like these faster dialed up reflections. I think they were new in Lumion 6. I think it was in Lumion 6 they were new. Anyway, it seems to me that speed ray reflections are kind of like the reflection ball reflections, but one step above. They're real reflections, but they're kind of like simplified generic reflections that just look good. So they work really well on like I don't know, like let me see, let me just start a new one here. If like maybe on this one, if I turn off let me add reflections, go to world, not that, reflection, and if I do speed ray, see like how the floor has like that generic reflection ball going on. Well, if I turn on speed ray reflections, see how that gets better? It's like one notch above those reflection balls. So we get real reflections, but they're not as good as planar reflections. So see how that's kind of a little bit pixelated still? See, we're not getting like that full, it's almost like it's not reflecting all the way. I don't know, but it gives the illusion of a good reflection. See how my doors are kind of being chopped off? Well, if I go to in here and add a reflection plane, see, watch what happens to these doors. See, now they're perfect. It's a perfect reflection. All right. So that's, you really want to be, fully aware. I know there's a blog post recently posted about that, and all the different reflection planes. So, but basically it's, I really don't pay too close attention to the actual reflection ball. It's more important just to understand, why is my floor reflecting the sky? So it's eliminating that kind of frustration of not understanding that. And then really the important thing is that when you go into your photo studio, you want to add the reflection effect and turn on your speed ray reflections and make sure you add those planar reflections. Yes, lens flare when you get in there. let's see. Yeah, you could totally use a background image, you know. So that'd be one way to do it. But the thing is that like I would be more apt to just do to like model something or there's this new like context import in Lumion. So there's that option if you need like a bunch of buildings. You can do a site like a Google Earth terrain import in SketchUp and import that here. Also, there's a really cool new plugin Daniel Tall put out, and that's Placemaker, so you can grab all those buildings and put them in that way too, if you need a little bit more control over modeling the buildings. So there's a lot of options for modeling the site that I'd probably be more into rather than that old method of like a, I forget, like a billboard, basically a billboard texture. But if you need it quick and need it easy, you could totally do a billboard texture, save it as a PNG, it'll show through. So that's one way to do it. I'm glad to clear things up on those reflection planes. V-Ray materials be imported. I don't work with V-Ray. I would imagine that probably the best answer I could give you is wherever you're working, if it's a V-Ray material and you export it, it's at least going to come out as that texture map, and then you'd have to assign properties in Lumion. But there's no way to like convert like shininess and emissiveness from V-Ray into Lumion. If you did it once though, you could take all your favorite materials, put them into Lumion one time, save the material set, and now every time you use those, just load the material set. So technically you only have to do it once. All right, so I really do appreciate you guys coming in today. And I think I'll probably wrap it up there, go grab some lunch. But yeah, sincerely appreciate it. And, watch, we'll be sending out the recording of this presentation if you want to check it out again. Definitely take a look at SketchUp for Professionals. That's the best way to learn how to do exactly what I showed you today. And I guess I'll catch you guys soon. Thanks for coming in.